Welcome everybody to our webinar today. Our topic today is the Africa Center, the first hub, their story, and the development of Communal HM program. Our presenters today are Jody Butterfield, Tony Ndoro, Precious Phiri, and Allan Savory is with us as well today. We do have some of the ACHM staff as well that will be kind of waving from the background and having a brief introduction as well. We're thrilled to have such a showing today from there as well. Today is Thursday, July 23rd. It is 10 a.m. Mountain Time, and we're just thrilled to have you all here with us today. We're going to go ahead and get started here with just a brief agenda. I do need to let you know that we are recording this session today, and we will be distributing the recording as well as the presentation within about 48 hours or so of the call. Just a high-level agenda. We're going to go through some introductions of the topic as well as our presenters today. We will then have Tony join us to give us more information about Zimbabwe. Jody will then discuss more about the Africa Center. And then Precious will discuss their work in the communities and the communal curriculum. We will then have a question and answer period, which I will hit more on in the housekeeping section. That question and answer period will include Allan as well, as he's not presenting today, but he will be standing by to answer questions. And then we'll have a brief closing. As far as the call goes today, everyone that is joining is muted just to lessen the distraction. If you have questions that you would like to ask, we do encourage that. We would appreciate if you utilize the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to ask those questions. As they come up, that's fine. We ask that you avoid using the chat box for questions as we can keep them more organized, and they help us inform our future webinars as well, so they can be captured within that Q&A feature. If you are on the YouTube live stream, please feel free to put a question in that box as well. It is being monitored, and we would love to answer the questions that you have. So Abby will be monitoring this, and at the end of the presentation there will be a Q&A kind of section that we will get to at that time. In the meantime, we ask that you please do remove any distractions that you may have around you and really give the next hour to learning about this wonderful content and hearing what we have to share with you today. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Abby Smith, our Hub Global Network Coordinator, and she will do a topic introduction as well as some presenter introductions as well. Abby.
Thank you, Paige, so much, and welcome everyone. I've been watching the chat window, and it's so fun to see everyone saying hi from all these different places in the world, from Boulder, Colorado, Germany, the Netherlands, Argentina, it's just Ontario. It's so fun, Nepal, incredible. So we're so honored to have you with us today and to have this conversation, and Chile, Turkey. So this is what our global network is all about. And the entity that started this whole movement of building a global network of people working together to regenerate land and heal communities really started, of course, with Allan and Jody and with the Africa Center in Zimbabwe. And the big idea with this webinar is to share that story and learn from them and see how we can replicate what they've done and what they can offer. I know as a hub leader in California, I've learned so much from Allan, from Jody, from the whole team at the Africa Center, and we desire to have the impact that they're having as well. So just an introduction to our speakers. Of course, we have Allan Savory with us, who's the creator of Holistic Management and the co-founder of the Savory Institute, and his amazing wife, Jody Butterfield, who is our chief curator. So she maintains the integrity of that body of knowledge that is holistic management. And of course, she is a co-founder of the Savory Institute as well. And we have Precious Phiri with us, and she was with the Africa Center for 10 years and helped develop the communal program. And Precious is one of the most amazing educators. I remember when she was teaching me in 2014 at the Africa Center, and I was just awestruck with her instruction. So Precious is an incredible educator. She's an accredited field professional with the Savory Institute, and she works with Regeneration International with communities across Zimbabwe. And then we have Tony with us as well. Tony Ndoro. He's the head of training and consulting for the Africa Center, and he's also an accredited educator with the Savory Institute. And then Tony, I love his smile. And then we also have Lau, who is the new manager of the Africa Center, and he's the hub leader. He's there standing behind Jody. So he's there to answer questions and can comment as needed. So we have an amazing team of speakers here today with us that have developed the communal program for holistic management and continue to lead in really challenging settings where community mobilization is required, and oftentimes the communities are facing extreme challenges, and we all have so much to learn from this team. So I'd like to turn it over to Jody to start.
Actually, it's going to be Tony that starts with an introduction of what's going on.
Yeah, it is actually me, Tony, starting. Thank you very much, Abby. I am Tony Ndoro, the head of training and consultancy at Africa Center. I will not be able to share the full video throughout the presentation due to bandwidth issues, but I will share just up to a few minutes. Right. I am going just to give you a brief on Zimbabwe. Next slide, please. Just go through our slides there. Right. I'm just getting an issue here with my network. Getting through there. Okay. Sorry. Right. I am not getting the slide show through, but anyway. Yes. I'm just talking about the country. Zimbabwe is in the Southern African region, and we have, yeah, right, that's the slide I was talking about. Thank you so much. I was struggling to see it. Sorry about that. That little red lady is Zimbabwe, and in green they.
We seem to have lost audio connection with Tony. We'll just go ahead and take a brief minute here and see if we can get him back. One of the joys and challenges of working with international internet.
Slide, please.
Tony, we have you back. If you can, please stop sharing your video. It might help with bandwidth, and we'll go ahead and listen to your audio, hopefully. Oh, unfortunately.
You still have me there?
Oh, yes.
Yes, I still have the picture of the last slide. I'm not getting through to the next one.
All right, let me go ahead and turn that. Well, I think we lost you for most of this one, so that's where I haven't changed it yet. Did you want to maybe review this one more time, please, and then we'll move forward?
I think let me just review that because I also lost contact from this end. Yes, I was just introducing Zimbabwe, which is where ACHM is, and I was saying that little red country is Zimbabwe, and in the enlargement, you have a green section there that represents Limbangombe Ranch. This is where ACHM is established. This is where our learning site is. So I was just going to move to the next slide, please. Yes, and we also boast the mighty Victoria Falls in our backyard. This is just 10 minutes drive from Victoria Falls International Airport. So if you do drop by at ACHM, you'll sure be able to have a look at the mighty falls, and that should be make your visit to us very special. Next slide, please. Our climate in Zim is a tropical climate. This has very many local variations, of course, due to the high veld the low veld, and the mountain ranges and everything in between. An average of 550 to 900 millimeters of rainfalls every year. And this is from late November to about March. And those using inches would say maybe 21.5 to 35.5 inches of rain, which is not a lot. And capturing and storing this rain is very essential for livelihoods and also for livestock. The grim reality of our water situation or rain situation in tropical Africa, and indeed most of Africa, is that in 2019, for instance, we lost 55 elephants to droughts due to inability to retain the water that we get from the rains. And next slide, please. Right, sorry, previous slide, sorry. My apologies there. Yeah, just one important point to note also on the brittleness scale, basing on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the least brittle and 10 being the most brittle, Zimbabwe is roughly on a 7 to 8 points mark, depending of course on where you're looking. And our rainfall patterns are, like I've said, not very, they're very erratic due to the droughts, and the amount of rain we get is not so much. And this impacts in the way people live their lives. And next slide, please. Next slide, please. Right, for a country with 15.6 million people, drought is a really serious problem, and the World Food Program has estimated that at least 8 million people will need food aid in 2020. Those are some of the statistics we have. COVID is around, it's affecting everybody. We are not an exception, but we are doing the best we can under the circumstances. The population that we have of that 15.6 million, 60% of that is under 25 years of age, and 91% are under 55. So we have a very young and vibrant population here. And also Zimbabwe is known for their exceptional resilience and their tenacity, their courage, and their intelligence. Among our illustrious daughters and sons, we have Tinashe, a hip-hop star in the USA, Derek Chisora, heavyweight boxing champion, flying the flag high in the UK. And we also have business mogul and philanthropist, Strive Masiwa, founder of telecoms giant Econet Wireless, and also the Higher Life Foundation, a philanthropic organization he founded with his wife. And obviously, we also have Mr. Allan Savory, the founder of Holistic Management, also the founder of SI International. And he's also the one who helped establish the ranch where the learning site is established in Victoria Falls. So we have really some talented and tenacious Zimbabweans. The outlook is quite good. Next slide, please.
That's it.
Oh, sorry, so that's not the, okay, you can just leave that place. It doesn't really affect my presentation if you like. You can leave it there, or you can revert to the VicPost one. Why am I here at ACHM? The reason why I'm here at ACHM is that I believe there is an opportunity for me to be involved in meaningful and impactful work. There's documented evidence that our land was healthier than it is today. We have living account testimonies of rivers in our communities that roared and flowed all year round that are no longer flowing today. We know also for a fact that once upon a time, it was possible for people to drive thousands of cattle and hundreds of horses from as far down as Cape Town to Harare and not lack any forage or water for the animals. We know because this is recorded. We also know the landscape is changing because we can see this every day before our very eyes. So Africa Center represents for me an opportunity to bring the issue of regeneration to the fore. It is a challenge for everyone, and also the COVID-19 pandemic, in my view, has taught us one important lesson, that the boundaries that we have are imaginary. Everything is really interlinked. The greatest threat to global peace and security, in my view, is not really nuclear weapons. I think it is global hunger and food insecurity. This, I think, is the challenge of our generation. I'm thrilled to be part of this team that's working to get the information out there, to get people taking the land seriously and understanding that soil is everything that we have, whether you live in the cities or in the village. Our fate is really tied in to this same thing. How we treat the soil and how it is important for how our future will be for our children. So we do not want to bequeath deserts to them. This is the reason why I'm here at ACHM. Thank you very much, Dave. Sorry for the inconvenience with the slideshow. It was a bit of a technical hiccup from this end, but I believe you got the message and you got connected somewhere. Thank you so much. And I'll leave you now to Jody.
Hi, everybody. Can you move the slide? Let's see if it goes, and let me know if my bandwidth is.
Yeah, it should be showing on the next one, Jody. Should be good to go.
Okay. It's still stuck on Tony's.
Oh, it'll just probably take a quick moment, hopefully. I do see the current one.
Okay, so hi, everybody. As I think some of you know, that Allan and I founded this Africa Center in 1992. We donated a ranch that Allan had owned for some years and knew he wanted to use it for a good purpose. And so we really said, we want to make this a learning site for the people of Africa. And so we put that ranch into a trust, and that trust is governed by a board of trustees, which includes the 5 gentlemen seated in this picture. They're the 5 chiefs of the Wangi communal lands. And it also includes me and Allan, and now 2 representatives from the Savory Institute. So the trustees delegated the management of the Africa Center, which is a nonprofit, to run the land, run all the programs on it, manage all the assets, and towards the same purpose. So that's kind of how we're structured. In 2013, we became the first Savory Network Hub, and which the whole program was modeled on us, at least parts of it. And in 2019, we became a kind of unofficial International Savory Institute campus. And the other one is in Colorado. Can you go to the next slide? Boy, it does take a long time.
Yeah, there's just a bit of a delay. My apologies.
Okay, so when the ranch was just nothing on it really. A few old house that had been burned down and not much else. So we started by trying to make it suitable for training, and we built these, what you see, these bungalows on the left, and we had one of our first training groups was the people you see on the right, and they stayed. There was no roof on it in those days, and our training room was the ranch workshop, which was the only other structure we had built. So that's how we started, but nobody even cared because they loved being out on the place, and it was so exciting having all these people here and learning together when it was all still kind of new. Many of these people in this picture are still at it more than 20 years later, still training people and active. These commercial farmers, all these people were farmers, what we call commercial farmers, in that they weren't communal farmers. And so much easier to manage that. And so it was easier to start with training them and moving things along with them. They did a really great job, and things really did spread with them. But from the beginning, we wanted to really be working in the communities and figuring out how we do that. So our first attempt, well, in the early years, say in the 90s, we worked with the communities that are nearby us. It's you saw on that map, it's an enormous area of communal land. And so we worked with the closest ones, and we we provided the training in holistic management, and we just expected them to go do it, but they didn't. It was a lot harder than that. There were so many things we didn't know and so many things we didn't understand that made it really difficult. And but they were very willing and forgiving of how bumbling we were. So can we go on to the next slide? Excuse me, I'm getting feedback. It's really disturbing. I'm sorry, we've got people listening in the background on another computer. So one of the next things we did to make it more of a training center, we built our training room, and we that you can see on the left, and that was made of local thatch that we harvested here, and stones that we recovered on the ground, and it was a beautiful building, and all made from local materials. Then the other nice thing, and it made us a great training center, and a lot of people wanting to come here, maybe not even for the trainings, because graduation was, we had so many places near Victoria Falls that we could go and celebrate. And this is just one of them, the little sunset cruise on the Zambezi River. There are just so many things to do that make it so much fun to be with a group of people like that. Then go on to the next one. It takes so long to move these slides. Yeah, it just did the bandwidth delay. Sorry about those delays. So the next thing that we knew that we had to do before we were going to be able to really work successfully in communities was we had a lot more to learn about the practicalities of herding animals in larger herds than most people were used to, and keeping those animals safe, healthy, and productive at the same time. So we have lots of predators in this area, and in all the communal lands we work with, there are lions, and leopards and wild dogs and lots of things that can come after cattle, and elephants that raid crop fields. So we have some challenges that way. But getting before we could really demonstrate, well, this is what we can do, we had to get our own cattle. And as you know, cattle aren't cheap. And we got our first 15 head from one of the farmers we trained, donated them. And he also donated our first herder. And over the years, we've been able to add more animals and gradually build up the herd, but we just couldn't do it fast enough because it was just too expensive. So we started getting neighboring and people in the neighboring communities, when their cattle were, they just ran out of forage. We said, okay, bring them over here. And so we had quite a few we got up to 500 head and sometimes larger than that. And that really now was a serious herd, and we could really work with that. And it could really do a good job impacting the land. As you can see, that herd, that photo's about 10 or 15 years ago. It was, they did a fantastic job on the land. To keep them really healthy and productive, we brought in a specialist from the United States who was wonderful and very good at low stress animal handling using Bud Williams techniques and those kind of things. And he taught the herders very quickly. I mean, they were really, really quick learners. And since then, they have trained many, many others. And I think when we could bring communal farmers over here and they could see this herd and see 500 or 600 animals and not a sound, not hearing any noise, and seeing how calm they were and how quiet and how fat. One farmer one time came back to get his cattle, and he couldn't recognize them. He'd never seen them fat ever. So it made a big difference to do that. And it made a big impression on people when they came to look at that. So we were getting on our way, but we still had some other challenges. So we need to go to the next slide. And that was wanting to be able to run livestock in an area that's full of wildlife like this, and do it in a predator-friendly way. We didn't want to, a lot of people did, and they thought that was the only thing you could do. So my internet connection is getting unstable.
Doesn't change the slide
Yeah,
yet.
and so there we are. So
There we go.
what we had to do was to develop something that was lion-proof and that could contain, a large herd at each night that would be movable, because we didn't want to leave it in one place, or you end up with a lot of dung in one place, or you have a beaten zone around it. So lots of reasons we didn't want to do that. So we first found a way that we were really excited about, using woven mats made with sticks and things that were locally available, and we could harvest them and make little panels. Then you could lash them together. You put them on the ox cart, then lash them together when you got to the site, and it worked really great. But it just didn't last. It wasn't going to be the answer. And when some communities members tried them and built them, they had to keep replacing the sticks so often that we realized it wasn't going to be a sustainable harvest at all. So we had to go to something else. And what we found was what you see on the right. I mean, it was a disappointment that we couldn't find some locally natural material that we could use. But so this is PVC, and what they call bonus sheeting. It's what they use in wildlife capture operations. And it worked very well because lions won't challenge it. It's only about maybe 5.5 feet tall. They won't, because they can't see the animals through it. They don't jump in. The livestock inside don't get panicked, and they're in tight enough. So anyway, it worked really well. And since then, when we started introducing them to communities, they said they just loved them because they found that in addition to keeping predators out, the bigger thing they did was they could move their animals over a crop field and fertilize it and loosen up the soil with the hooves. And they had incredible, the yields in the next growing season after they'd done that in the dry season were just so phenomenal that they, it was easy for them to adopt this. This was the thing that excited them a lot. And Precious is going to talk more about that. Now we go on to the next slide. And it's it'll take a while to load. So
I think on this end they're coming through okay, Jody, if you want to keep speaking to it, because we do see it on the Ring Central side. Okay, all right, it's just me. Okay, so when we kept the crawl, we call this a crawl, it's the enclosure. We'd keep it in place for about a week, herd the animals to them each night, and then each morning herd them back out. And it was to wherever they were supposed to go. Each morning they would go out and they would graze in a certain area according to a grazing plan. But what we learned in doing this, that was when the rainy season came, these impacted areas just sprung to life. I mean, it was just phenomenal what happened. So as you can see on here, the top left, that was before we had the crawl on there. And then just below it is just after. You can't see as much detail in this, but there's been a lot of dung and urine put in there. And then the top right is what it was in the next growing season. You can just see how thick that vegetation was. And the lower right is what it was by the end of the growing season, going into the dry season. And you can just see how much better compared to that very initial photograph. It's just night and day, and that provided so much soil cover. Even if the animals didn't eat it, they would trample it down and the soil was much better. But what was really interesting in this case is the photo in the middle. If you look down into the ground in that the one above it, all these fungi came in, and we'd never seen anything like it. We haven't seen anything since, but every one of these, we've done hundreds of them now for wherever the crawl is put, and it always improves, but it's always different. So we are just learning all the time, and sometimes just being surprised, not learning yet, but it's amazing. Then
these sorts of demonstrations, because we could do this quick, if you just put it down in the dry season, do this treatment, and then in the rains, they see the difference. We could do that in communities too, and we did. And the big value of that was it was really powerful in raising awareness of what livestock could do to improve forage production. Something that people just found hard to believe, that livestock could even do anything good for the land. But once they saw it could be done and how it could be done, it changed everything. It gave them a lot more confidence, and we were really on our way. I want to go the next slide and tell me when it shows.
Yes, we are all set.
Okay. So we had more to learn when it came to working with communities. One of the fears communities had in bringing animals together into a larger herd than they were used to was that sickness is going to spread and more readily. And that's a lot of farmers would say the same thing. I mean, it didn't prove to be the case. It hasn't yet. But we still realized we needed to pay a little more attention to livestock husbandry, health, and so on, so that we could make sure livestock were healthy and people wouldn't blame poor performance on the grazing or the putting them in a kraal or whatever. So we worked with some government vets, which were our veterinarians, but very few and far between, and huge areas to attend to, so they could hardly ever help individual farmers. So we trained some local community members, and we had some good help from Heifer International. Some of you may know that organization. They are very good with animal health, and that did make a difference. It really helped. And the other thing that we had to do was we wanted to, on the left, you see, we started a micro lending program for village women. Up until that time, they'd largely been subservient and silent. I mean, they would never speak up. And just this little program transformed them just by, for the first time, having money of their own, managing this money of their own. They just changed. They started calling each other by their first names instead of so-and-so's wife, things like that. It just transformed them in their personalities. They began to speak up, and they began to take on leadership roles, which was really great. And it was the beginning of a mobilization process that we eventually realized was essential for anyone who has to work in communities, is getting people prepared to organize themselves for holistic management. Next slide.
It's up.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Give me that. Okay, so we did, by 2008, we'd learned a lot, and enough that we could put forward a proposal to USAID, convincing them that we'd found a way to work with communities, and we wanted to pilot our new teaching materials and some ideas we developed around mobilization. That went well enough that the next year we got another grant to just continue the work. And then by 2010, we managed to convince them that we were really ready to do a big training of trainers program, develop curriculum, have a whole mobilization process, all of that. And we did develop that, and it was a huge grant. I'm not recommending people do that because it has some pitfalls too. But it gave us what the curriculum we have today, which has since been expanded, it's been modified based on what we've learned. And the nice thing about it is it was really specific to our context here, which was multiple languages in the same community, agro-pastoral, not pastoral communities, but agro-pastoral. Crops are even more important than the livestock, and very literacy level So we developed materials that you could work with any of those things, and it was good. Then at the end of the year,
Hey, Jody, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We're having a bit of feedback. It's just a little harder to hear you all of a sudden, so I want to make sure that we can hear you very well.
I don't know where it's coming from. It's probably...
There we go. I think we have it figured out. Yeah, why don't you go ahead? I just wanted to make sure everyone could hear you. Thank you.
Okay, so anyway, at the end of that year, we were really becoming known, and the most exciting thing that ever happened to us here was winning the Buckminster Fuller Challenge. Came with a $100,000 annual prize, and to support the development and implementation of a strategy that has significant potential to solve some of humanity's most pressing problems. That was just a big boost to everybody. And we spent that money on better housing and tents and equipment for our herding team, because we couldn't have achieved anything without these herders. And throughout every community here, they and which is common with agro-pastoral communities, is the herders were not given a lot of respect. They're usually the little kids, or disabled adults who couldn't do anything else. And we wanted to change that, because what the herders we have now, we have 12 of them. They're all from these communities around here. They've all learned how to do everything that they need to do with grazing planning, whatever. They're professionals, and they can develop a grazing plan, and they can implement it with really a surprising degree of sophistication. They are quite talented. They can recognize and treat sick animals. They can protect them from predators, and all that while they're regenerating the land to help. So they became trainers in their own right. Lots of whenever we have training here, they always are out in the field with the herders. And for people who aren't even here for training, who just come to visit, the most exciting thing they can do here is have a night out with the herders, and they all talk about it. It's like the most unforgettable thing they've ever had, especially when there are lions around. So by the end of 2014, we trained over 100 community facilitators from NGOs, community organizations, government ministries in Southern Africa region and beyond. And that program that we developed is what Precious will talk to you about. Before I turn it over to her, though, I'd just like to summarize what the Savory Institute, I think, learned from the Africa Center and incorporated into the requirements for becoming a Savory Hub, which just became a template. And I would say first was just the value of having a locally managed learning site that provided convincing demonstration of holistic management, what it can do for people, and in a specific hub context. And by that I mean it could show people, hey, it works here, and it can work for them too. And that just had a lot of power in it. Secondly, at the SI, and which includes myself, really appreciated the value of having local educators, field professionals who understand the culture, who speak the languages, and they can adapt the training materials and techniques as needed for that local context. That's something we could never do from Boulder as SI. It has to be local. And finally, hubs can beget hubs. We trained people who went on to form hubs in other places, and when you gradually get more hubs in a region around you, they become partners, they become collaborators, and they strengthen the efforts of everybody. So that's it for background on Africa Center. Over to you, Precious.
Thank you, Jody. Thanks, everyone, and hello. So I'll put on my video as well, hoping that the bandwidth will be fine, but if we feel like we're having a bit of problems, I'll switch to no video. So I'm going to talk about our work in the communities As has been said, I was part of the team that actually developed the communal curriculum that Jody has shared a little bit about. So I'm just hoping to take you on a journey in a bit of our history, some lessons, and some benefits that we saw. And our belief is that there's lots of growth that keeps happening because communities are different anyway. So I'll just talk a bit about the Hwange communal lands, which is the community area where Africa Center for Holistic Management is located, and where we rolled out the trials of this work when the communal work first began. Hwange communal lands is about 150,000 people who live in this Hwange district. So both a bit of urban, but mostly rural. Zimbabwe in itself has about 70% of its population being rural and smallholder farmers. To be specific, about 67.7 something, so 70%. I'll talk a bit about the land tenure system before we go to the challenges that these communities face, but we can leave that slide on. So the communities where you live in a rural area, you do not necessarily own the land. So you do not have a title deed to the land. The land is state owned, that's one. But communities are managed by a traditional leadership structure, and there's also a political leadership structure which works mostly for developmental purposes. Then we have government extension office work that happens in agriculture, veterinary, and local communal health. Cattle here, or goats and donkeys, and sheep in some parts of Hwange are headed on foot by young men, boys. Jody spoke a bit about the role of herders. I think we'll dive into it more as we go further. And these communities are agro-pastoral. They do cropping and livestock, and they love cropping more than livestock. Okay, so I think we'll go into our next slide. Okay, so when you drop off the Victoria Falls Airport and you're excited about everything, and you dive into the Hwange communal lands, what meets you in most cases, land-wise, would be somewhat shocking, but this is the everyday challenges that these communities are faced with. And I grew up in Hwange communal lands, and so it's my home of birth. We have lots of drought. So in a good year of rain or bad year of rain, there is always crop failure. I think because of how we've managed land and how we manage the cropping in general. Livestock have barely enough forage. That's why you heard in the beginning, Jody said, actually, communities sometimes would bring their animals to the Africa Center, which is right across the road. These communities are in the periphery of the Hwange National Park, whose habitat is also really going down or dilapidating and degrading all the time. So desertification is a big, big problem that we are faced with. We do not have enough water in our rivers. If we have dams, they silt because of flash flooding whenever it rains. So we do not capture even water of the little rain that comes. We're in the natural region 4 and 5, which is the lowest rainfall region with highest temperatures and really long dry spells, even in the rain. The communities are faced with lots of poverty, and as Tony indicated in the beginning, that there's almost a perpetual dependency on food aid. So can we go to the next slide? Okay, so working with these communities, this is just a brief run through what we have seen. For example, you look at the land on the left, this would have been a peak of the dry season, of the raining season or growing season. And then without land management using holistic management or holistic grazing. So you see that the ground remains bare. When it rains, water flash floods. There is no grassland that used to thrive when our elders tell us of what used to happen. But when you implement holistic management in these communities, these challenges tend to be addressed, and you start to grow grass sometimes as early as in the first rainfall season, when you've started to implement the tools of grazing and animal impact and all that using even bombers in the rangelands or in the crop fields. So, and a great potential for landscape regeneration, and some of which we've actually witnessed. We can go to the next slide. Applying or implementing the program in the communities has really created lots of leadership potential for women. Jody spoke at length about that. For the actual traditional leaders, I think the common term that people are used to is servant leadership or leading by example. You get leaders actually implementing some of the tools that show results, and then communities tend to follow. And women in leadership roles, we had one community where a woman ended up being a bursar of a school from just starting by working in a community that's mobilized through our program. And then leadership of the youth. The guy at the bottom right, his name is Noel. He's from a community called Sianyanga. There he was about 23 years old, but he was chairing the whole program in that community. And there he was showcasing his harvest of his maize crop when he used some of the tools that we'll talk about to implement in his crop field. The guy on the left is a herder who in most cases, as has been mentioned, are considered as low class, like, oh, you failed at school, you're going to be a herder, you know, you don't have O levels, so you're not going to the city, you're going to chase animals. So herding has been regarded as a really low grade job, and it's done by someone who doesn't have anything else to do. But all that has been changing, at least in the communities that we've worked with. Let's go to the next slide. In other places where we have taken the same, idea of high animal impact in a small, dense crop field, most of our soils here are sandy Kalahari sands that have little to no nutrition at all, and most crops would fail. And when it rains, because of bare soil in the crop fields, water quickly evaporates or transmits off the ground, and then the crops will naturally just fail. But when communities implement and introduce livestock as a tool to impact first the soil, and then work on the ground to open the pores of the ground so that you capture enough water, and plant diverse crops to support grains and legumes and things like squashes, which is pumpkin squash, that's what they usually farm, and cowpeas for nitrogen fixing, working hand in hand with the Ministry of Agriculture, extension officers, and others who are better in conservation agriculture. We join those forces. And so you see communities improving their soil from, okay, that photo is seated the wrong way. So from the light colored sand to the proper brown, where the soil has now been enriched. And then people increase harvest, and to encourage farmers to continue participating, we usually do, we call them field days, where other communities come to learn together on this bumper harvest, and they celebrate. And everyone would have impacted their crop fields. Usually they harvest sometimes 3 times better than everyone else in the community. And so it's a part of food security, but it has a bigger role, which plays a leading indicator that when you work on your soil using the tool of livestock, you have a potential to even improve your rangelands, your grasslands, which is far bigger than croplands. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so we are going to, so that was a little overview of the community we work in, challenges, and the brief way of how holistic management has addressed some of the challenges that these communities are facing. Now we'll go to our story of the holistic management curriculum for communities, which we called HLLM, a brief for holistic land and livestock management, which was some sort of adoption of the bigger and dense holistic management knowledge that you find in the textbooks, or when you talk to different levels of people in different offices, but breaking down the information such that it's workable for local community, local people, using just the tools that we have every day. I will share a bit on why it was important to do this. I think in 2005, that's when we started to have the first grant to roll out communal work. And then, as Jody said, by 2008 and 2009, we had good lessons on what it really takes to almost effectively share information on holistic management with communities. So I think, at least from my personal experience, what I've learned is I think the technical aspects of the tools that are found in the holistic management toolbox, holistic grazing and animal impact, that's a little bit easier because everyone would understand how animals' hooves would work on the ground and the dung would impact. But actually getting people together is where the biggest challenges are. Social issues, historical conflict in a community, tribal differences, religious, political differences. So in our curriculum, when we developed it, it was a big team, lots of brains came together to just get the importance of, okay, how do we get everyone's heart, mind, head, feet, and hands on this work? Because I remember, I'll share a funny story. One time, Allan said, he told one of our lead facilitators of the time, his name is Elias, he said, Elias, if I see you holding a chart and teaching any holistic management in the communities, I will scream. So it was so funny because of how difficult it is to penetrate to people's social structures. Even if you have the technical content, we learned there are a lot of other layers that we needed to peel off. And so there came the development of the curriculum in 2010 from the grant that Jody spoke about. We used, so first of all, the most important thing was experiential learning. You desire that people are hands-on on the ground so that they get the feel of the work. Let's go to the next one. I'm just sharing the few tools. And then we had a community mobilization tool called the Community Action Cycle that we were taught by the Training Resources Group, that they used this tool to work with maternal health in Asia. And so we had to look at this, learn about this tool, and then figure out which segments of our course get into which part of the stages here. So it was very intense and lots of learning. You go to the communities and try it out. Yes, no, you come back. So the importance of then belonging to a community that you are working with, because then it creates a space for dialogue. But this was our main tool now for dialoguing. After trying many trainers resources. So I just wanted to share that tool. And this tool is there in our materials as an extra. At first, we had built it into all our materials, but then as SI took up the curating of the materials, we also saw it fit to say, no, I think communities or different organizations or different partners have their own mobilization strategies. So what if we set it aside as a separate tool, and then if they feel they need it, they can still use the community action cycle. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this slide is talking a little bit about the participatory methods that we use to facilitate. For example, this one is a decision-making tool where people in a community would then explore the causes of land degradation. So you want to address landscape regeneration using the tool of holistic grazing and animal impact. But then you want a tool to use to create and stimulate a dialogue. Why I found this tool very important, so it's problem tree that then gets converted into a solution tree. Why I found this tool very useful is in our heads and minds as human beings or community members, we have many different ideas of what has caused the problems that we have now. But this tool has helped us ask the deep questions of why. And this tool also helps you dig into the foundations of actual causes of land degradation or desertification. So that's just also in passing as a participatory tool for decision making, which is one of the key foundations in training holistic management. So you break it down to simpler terms in HLLM. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the foundation topics a little bit, which is, we called it here eco-literacy, because then you spend a lot of time with people on the ground and honestly using very simple language, but to study the ecosystem processes and how well are they functioning in this ecosystem? What does that mean for our lives now? All living things that we share this land with, and for our future, for example. So we have in this, in the foundation modules, you have eco-literacy, which is studying and talking about ecosystem processes, using also demonstrations and lots of experiential work. So it's mostly hands-on, hands dirty, water, mud, and anything that you can come up with to show the picture. And then we have the holistic decision making, which I just showed you using the problem tree and the solution tree. And then you have also holistic financial planning for communities as businesses. This we've started to also roll out to communities so that we understand that ultimately we want our lives, the whole circle of our lives, our social, cultural, economic, and biological, to be hinged on the decisions that we make pertaining to our land. Okay, so that's the foundation topics. We can go to the next one. We also have the land and livestock management topics. I put in a picture card there. Those are some of the resources that we have. This definitely applies maybe to just Wange communal lands and a few communities in Zimbabwe. It may not apply anywhere else. So each person where they work, they have to create their own picture cards that suit them. But for us here, for example, when you're teaching herd management, holistic grazing, these are some of the picture cards that you use before you actually fill in holistic grazing charts that will help you then follow your implementation with your community. So the land and livestock management topics, I'll just go through them just by word. We have the herd management, land management, land and social planning, which is like your land planning in the commercial segment. But this is land and social, because you're organizing people in a land that's commonly owned and herders that come from different homes, each home with its different rules. And maybe some people don't want to join the big herd first. What do we do about that? With the help of leaders. And then we have holistic plant grazing, which is the main tool that we will implement here. So you want to do that after land and social planning. And then improving crop field soils using animal impact, which communities love. And if you're not careful as a facilitator, that's the only thing that you can actually end up implementing. And it's called holistic management. And it is not, because it's just a small part in a bigger whole. I hope that's clear. And I'm sorry, I have to be quick there. And then to just keep monitoring the work that you're doing, we also have land monitoring, which is simplified and doable by just everyday communities. Though at SI level, then you would have other bigger and more intensive tools. Let's go to the next few slides that I'll just be talking about. This is one showing trainings and sessions. In Zimbabwe, the bottom one there is in Somalia. So I just showed you different communities and different settings. We make use of what's there. For example, I'll also jump a little bit and say, even when we do our grazing, our paddocks, we don't have fences here. First of all, because the landscapes are really huge. So fences will be expensive. And more than being expensive, they usually get stolen by either neighboring communities who don't know what's going on there. So lots of mobilization would have to go in there. And instead of spending funds creating fences, how about maybe spending funds promoting exchange visits to the learning sites and developing training materials that will then help you actually effectively implement the project. So these are some of the trainings and sessions. There are lots of benefits that we found in these kind of training sessions. I remember our program goal when we first started was to empower, I'll use the word empower and tell you a story about it, to empower communities to restore their land and rivers for now and the future generations. And when we translated it, empower didn't sound very good in our local language, because they're like, okay, so we're crippled, we don't know anything. So when we worked on the ground, the word will then translate to work together with communities to do. So there are a lot of benefits. I think because of our time, I'll just skip. I think Jody spoke a lot about the benefits, including women being confident, young boys being confident, and sometimes resolving tribal conflicts and myths and witchcraft stories that have stood for ages, pertaining cattle and bringing animals together and goats and sheep. But when you continue in dialogue, people have eventually come together. I wanted to finish off my presentation. Well, maybe before I go off to finish off my presentation, I just wanted to say the structure of the materials, the curriculum that we have what is called the Facilitator's Planning Guide, which is a tool for me as a facilitator that I prepare to go and create a dialogue in the community. So you don't keep rigid, you keep flexible, and then you work with what you find on the ground, obviously, so that you reach out to people. It's a relationship building, you know. And then we have what we call community booklets or management guides, which are broken down topics, the holistic management topics that I just shared with you, and then the planning procedures. We have what we call maintenance guides for when you're going to develop infrastructure like water points, those enclosures that you want to keep moving your animals in. So those are like technical manuals, yeah? So our last slide, I believe, yes, will be lessons over the years. So honestly, I'll use this term, it just came to my mind right now. I think for us working as Africa Center, and I think anyone who works with communities in critical matters like rolling out holistic management thinking, holistic framework, it becomes like dancing with broken bones, because you're also learning to trust the human spirit, yourself first, and then to trust the people that you are working with, and to trust the process that sometimes takes very long, while you have pressure maybe from donors as well, like how come you haven't done this, how come you haven't done this, because you cannot determine how long behavior change or transformation will take. I think for us that was the biggest lesson, to say you can go with your preconceived structures of if we do A, B, and C, this is what will come out, but that's a reductionist way of how fundings or grants work. And this was a big struggle for us as we implemented the work. The second lesson was servant leadership from community leaders on the ground. It's very important. And then when you are planning, when you've created your land and social plans and grazing plans, important to have social bylaws, a binding commitment, such that after the excitement of what we've agreed on is finished, excitement of creating of our holistic context from our solution tree is done, we have this that also binds us together. And then finding key drivers and build relationships with them. Who are those people in the community? And most of the times it's women. How do you respectfully lift them up so that they also have a strong voice? Understanding that your facilitator roles keep changing. Sometimes you're a friend, sometimes you're a child there, sometimes you're a mentor, a coach, you know, all that. And the biggest of them all, just keeping the community dream alive, daring and challenging them. And not that it's easy, but that's just what I think I learned and what we learned as a team. And I hope we can continue to really unpack any other thing, even off this presentation. That's it from me for now. Thanks. Thank you, Paige.
Wonderful. Precious. Thank you so much. Thank you to Tony. Thank you, Jody. We're going to go ahead and transition now into our question and answer period. I would like to mention we are a bit over time today because of our wonderful content, which has been great. It's about 8 past the hour, and I'm going to go ahead and have Abby pitch out a few questions, and feel free to stay if you cannot. This session is being recorded, so you can always reference back and listen to those answers at a later time as well. Abby, please.
Thank you, Paige. I just wanted to mention that there's a lot of really good questions that have come into the Q&A, and those are all recorded, which is why Paige and I really want you to enter them into that space in particular. So we'll send all of those to the team at ACHM, and they will work on answering them and the ones that they can answer, and then we will send those answers with the questions out to everyone who's registered. So don't feel like your question was missed. I want to start with one that came in from Peru, and this came from someone who has experience working with communities in the Andes, and he says, how do you start a program in a community where people are so used to living in poverty, racism, and corruption that they can't even think that there's a possibility that they could improve their lives? How do you inspire people who have already given up on believing in a better future? So Precious, would you like to start with that one?
Yes, thank you for that question, Abby, and to the person who asked the question. So your question, your community, actually, I think reminds me of where we work anyway. We have same challenges, the same hardships. And I remember one time, one community where a 26-year-old said, I don't know what a granary is, which is a food storage. So that means for 26 years, they've never had to store food. I have had chances where you realize that the only way to break into the inner space of getting people committed is dialogue that challenges their deepest values. What is the source of pride? For example, here, if you have to buy milli meal from the stores, you're considered as poor, for example. So what is that place of pride for these people? What do you identify with? What connects you to the space that you're in? And what is at stake if you do not address it? Sometimes it's hard to dream, but the continued dialogue which leads them into creating the holistic context. The holistic context is the unifying force. As Allan always puts it, something that people would rather die than not have. So what is that? I think that's the question to start from. Otherwise, there is no answer to how you can actually get them to work. It's different in many places.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Precious. Allan, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
You are muted. If you could please unmute.
Yeah, Precious did very well. You know, we need to look at this at two levels. As individuals, we can choose to change light bulbs or ride a bicycle to work or change our crop or whatever. At scale, at large scale, everything has to be done through an organization. And so what we're doing, Precious is doing, we're doing the best we can at the level of the individuals in impoverished communities. And we've got to just keep doing that, the best that we can, and we're all learning. And it's I don't want to repeat what's been said about finding the opinion formers, the leaders in the community, all the things that Precious said so well, and Jody's outlined. But at the end of the day, we're all in this boat together. Whoever is thinking they're dealing with a poor community in Africa or Colombia or anywhere in South America, what about America? What about Europe? Every country is virtually facing this, where you've got impoverished people, wealthy people, etc., and battling. And so that dealing with it at scale is something that all our hubs are going to help us do. Changing public opinion on a bigger scale is going to help us to do until institutions change and policies change, where that is where we will deal with the poverty. doing the best we can at the ground level, we are always battling with policies that come from above that are creating this poverty. In fact, you almost, if you have no government, you have no poverty. So many of us are facing a situation where it's our governments that are causing the poverty, and our large organizations. The people on the ground are battling. So we've got to understand that, do the best we can on the ground, but all of us begin team working globally, because this is a global problem. And nothing has shown that more than the pandemic now, where a tiny little virus in a month did more economic damage than a world war almost. It's showing how we're all team humanity in this one boat. And I think if we keep reminding ourselves, we've got to operate on the individual level, our little communities, our farms, our families, etc. But we've also got to start uniting until policies change as well. Then we will be able to tackle poverty.
Thank you, Allan, so much. Thank you, Precious. We have just a few more minutes, and I'm trying to combine a few questions so we can get in more in our time together. One, maybe Tony, you could answer this question. It's about the political situation in Zimbabwe, to give some context to what you're working in and the challenges that you're facing, and perhaps pair that with one that asks about the percentage of Zimbabwe farmland that's farmed regeneratively. Do you mind answering those questions, Tony?
Tony, we need to have you unmute, please. Let me go ahead and try to unmute you from this side. Let's see, there we go. I think we've got you now.
Thank you. Sorry, I was just saying it's quite a lot of questions all in one. I'll just try and answer them quickly. The political situation is common knowledge that our society is polarized, and therefore, obviously, where there's polarization, there is conflict. So we have to take cognizance of that. We have also to take cognizance of the fact that there are a lot of issues around land, and obviously that is something that has been resolved or is being resolved. But we're trying very much to work with everybody because what we prioritize is the land, management of the land. It does not really, we're not really looking into the political structure of the state. We're looking at managing food security for people. And that begins with just managing the top soil that you're standing on. So this is applicable to everybody. It doesn't really affect politicians or communal farmers alone or commercial farmers. This is really a battle for everybody, because that topsoil is really what's feeding everybody from the communal lands right into the cities. So we are all in this together. This is about the regeneration of the land. The only planet we have is planet Earth. We do not have any second home. Those that are trying to get to Mars, good luck to them. But here we are doing the best we can. This is the only place we have. So yeah, in short, I would say those are the key things as we approach regeneration efforts in Zimbabwe and across Africa.
Awesome, wonderful, thank you. I'm going to take one more question, and then the rest again will be answered by the team at ACHM and then emailed to everyone who has registered. Jody, this one was back to you. When you were talking about that in the beginning, when you started just teaching the local communities holistic management, and you said they didn't automatically adopt the system. Can you go back and unpack or elaborate more on what you did to actually get them to adopt holistic management?
It was just we were just being naive. We just said, we have this great information and we're going to share it with you. And we share it with you. And now we've done our job. So now they'll go and do it. That's how, I mean, it wasn't quite that bad, but it was pretty close. And we just didn't understand. We didn't know about mobilizing people, that there needed to be some preparation even just to organize a community, elect officers so that you can get things done, have committees that help you plan the grazing. I mean, there were all kinds of things that we just didn't know about. And we thought, hey, nobody will have a problem with putting all their animals in one big herd. Well, why did I think that? I mean, any neighbor I've had anywhere would resist that, because, you know, you might get disease. Somebody's bull might get to your cow. I mean, there are all kinds of things that could happen that we weren't really thinking through carefully enough, and just assumed they would all work that out. But a lot more had to happen. There was witchcraft going on. There were different political views going on. There were just so many other things that we couldn't know. And I mean, except some of our staff like Precious and Elias, and I mean, they were from there, so they knew, and maybe I didn't listen. But that was it. Just a little naive thinking that they could do everything. Just if we taught them, they could do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jody. Paige, I think we're about at our time for our Q&A session.
Yes, wonderful. Well, Q&A is wrapped up. Abby, would you care to mention journeys?
Yes, so the Africa Center, as you gathered through this presentation, I hope is an amazing place. And there's actually an opportunity to go visit it. It's facilitated through a group called Savory Journeys. You can get more information on that at savory.global. And it will be a trip that focuses on experiencing the work of the Africa Center and exploring the region. There's Victoria Falls and other national parks. It's an amazing place. That will be May 21st through the 29th next year, 2021. And they're going to continue to monitor, of course, COVID to see that situation as we get closer. It's a group that's very small that goes on the trip. It's 6 to 12 guests. You stay at the Africa Center, and you get to visit local projects, Victoria Falls, Chobe National Park, Botswana. So if you're interested in that, you can go to savory.global, or you can reach out to the Savory Institute to learn more. Thanks, Paige.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Abby. I'm putting on the screen now the contact information for everybody on the call today. As I mentioned before, this presentation will be shared, so no reason to quickly jot it down. You will have this information shortly. And just to close, I wanted to mention our next session will be held August 27th, same time, so 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Mountain Time. And the topic will be Up Close and Personal with Allan Savory and Jody Butterfield. This will be more of a intimate fireside chat feeling conversation with Allan and Jody. So we look forward to seeing all of you there. Once again, the recording and the presentation will be sent in the next few days, and then we will need a little bit of time to get all the questions answered, the wonderful questions that you've asked today. Apologies, we didn't get a chance to get to all of them today, but we're excited to distribute those once they are answered as well. Thanks again for attending. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.